We can use psychedelics safely and prepare for the experience by considering the tips in this book and others like it. More than 12 years after my first mushroom trip, and a few years since I touched them at all, I went to a psilocybin mushroom retreat and tripped for healing for the first time. In the course of a week, I was to take mushrooms 3 times in shamanic ceremony accompanied by group therapy, integration meetings, and yoga and meditation classes. After my first ceremony on 1.5 grams of golden teachers, I was ready to give up. Even though I had done a ton of research and wasn't psychedelic naive, I had a tremendously challenging experience. I felt completely inadequate and unqualified to write this book, a feeling that had been causing me a constant low-level anxiety for the previous couple months. I cried for almost the entire trip. It didn't feel like the cathartic experience I'd read about in books and online. Instead of less ego, I got more, and a mean, hateful one at that. I felt totally defeated, and I begged the mushrooms, my subconscious, anyone, for answers. Why did I feel this way? Why was I so anxious and disconnected? Why was I so depressed and insecure? I wanted to dig into my past and find the one traumatic event that made me the way I was so everything in my life could be explained and I could move on. Instead, I cried and cried, and the only answer I got was, "Why?" is the wrong question. The next day, I began to learn the true value of integration, a concept I had written about and yet didn't fully understand until I was raw from a challenging psychedelic experience, the first bad trip of my life. For me, integration, processing and learning from my psychedelic experience, see Chapter 11, began during an unassuming conversation over lunch. But talking about how I felt the night before while someone held space for me changed my outlook incredibly as I moved forward. I stopped thinking of myself as a reporter there to document the magic mushrooms, let my guard down, and tried to embrace the experience. That's when I really started learning about psilocybin rather than fearing its mysterious power. I also opened myself up to the 17 other retreat participants and stopped seeking so much alone time. At my own pace, I became more comfortable and stopped constantly comparing myself to everyone. My second ceremony was much more forgiving. I settled back into my yoga mat and pillows and began to go inward, which I was admittedly resisting slightly, and felt tranquil, albeit still sad. I thought of my mother and her cancer, my med's mama, Armenian for grandmother, and her dementia, and I cried, yet nowhere near as many tears as 2 days before. But I also realized everything is a choice, and I can choose to be closer to them rather than prematurely grieving their loss. I saw that everything in my life is ultimately my decision, and with this new perspective, I can choose to act differently. It was a powerful experience and an incredibly healing one. The next day in our integration meeting, I was finally able to share without being choked up by tears. It felt so good, and I was starting to get some of that catharsis that I was looking for and had read so much about. This sense of self-forgiveness extended into the next few days, making it easier to connect and share with people while I wasn't on mushrooms. I felt more comfortable in my own skin, more confident speaking up for myself and asking for things, something that my social anxiety prevented in the past. This set me up to have an incredible experience during the third and final ceremony, where I took the highest dose of mushrooms of my life, 4 grams. I was determined to go deeper, to stay in my spot with my eyes closed and go inward rather than resist and look at trees or go play with my new friends. The trip I had is hard to put into words, even though I'm convinced I had a spiritual or mystical experience. I never completely lost my ego, although it felt different. All of my fear and sadness were gone, and I was a ball of light, The Laughing Buddha.
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.